Hi, it's Miss House. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the order of operations. When an expression contains more than one operation, we must follow the correct order so that we will arrive at the correct answer. And here is the order we have to follow. First, any operations that are inside grouping symbols. Now, the most common one is the set of parentheses, but you may also have brackets, braces, absolute value bars, or this fraction or division bar, and it's telling you to divide last. In other words, do everything on top, everything on bottom, and then divide last. Also note, if there is more than one grouping symbol, such as you have parentheses and brackets, you have to start inside the innermost set. So if I have a bracket and a set of parentheses, I would start in the innermost. So I start on these inner parentheses. Now, after we do our grouping symbols, we must evaluate our exponents. Exponents are a shortcut for multiplication of a repeated number. So I can write 2 to the 5th as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, but 2 to the 5th is a much shorter way, and that's called using an exponent. We have a base of 2 5 times, and it means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and that comes out to 32. Now we can evaluate our exponents on the calculator with the exponent key, and this is the exponent's key. It's called the caret key. So if I want to do 2 to the 5th on the calculator, I do 2 exponent key 5, and that will also give me the answer 32. And that keeps me from having to go 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. It keeps up with the number of factors of 2 that we need. Now note, for the exponent of 2 only, there's a special key, the x squared key. So if I want to do 5 squared, I can do 5 caret key 5, or 5 caret key 2, or I can do 5 and hit the x squared button, and it'll give me 25. Now after we've done the grouping symbols, then the exponents, we're going to evaluate multiplication or division, whichever is first from left to right. So we have to be careful here. For example, if I have 24 divided by 6 times 2, I don't do this multiplication first. I do 24 divided by 6 is 4. 4 times 2 gives me an 8. If you do the multiplication first, you get 2 as the answer, which is incorrect. Division is first in line, so it comes first. So multiplication and division is always left to right. And finally, we evaluate addition and subtraction. Let me fix that. It should say subtraction. Left to right, whichever is first. So again, if we have 10 minus 5 plus 5, we do 10 minus 5 is 5, plus 5 is 10. We don't add these two and get 10, and 10 minus 10 is 0. That would be incorrect. We must go left to right. So here is a summary of the order of operations. First, we do grouping symbols. Then we do exponents. We multiply or divide, always left to right. And we add or subtract, always left to right. We need to also talk about square roots. When finding a square root, we are looking to find the number which, when squared, results in the given number. So if I want to find the square root of 25, it's 5, because 5 squared is 25. However, some numbers do not have integer or perfect decimal square roots. These numbers are called irrational numbers and can only be estimated. And we'll use the square root key to find these. And the square root key is located above the x squared key on the TI-30X2S. So you have to press second and then x squared. So if I want to do the square root of 2, I have to press second x squared 2 equals, and I get this long number, and we can't actually see all the rest of the digits because our calculator can only hold so many in its display. Just as an example, the square root of 2 to 10 million digits has been computed, and here is part of it. This is not all of it. If you go out and you Google the square root of 2 to 10 million digits, you can see the whole 10 million digits. So look, 1.4142135 is what we're seeing. Since we cannot write all digits of the square root of 2, we will estimate it by rounding it as we are instructed. So to do the square root of 2, we press second x squared 2 equals, we get the decimal, and we round it to 1 decimal point is 1.4, to 2 is 1.41, to 3 is 1.414, to 4 decimal places it's 1.4142, to 5 it's 1.4121, and then be careful, to 6 decimal places it's 1.414214. So 1.414214 because the 5 rounds up that last digit to a 4. So let's apply the order of operations for these exercises. Now notice in number 1, we've got multiplication, and we also have exponents. So we're going to do the exponents first, and then we'll do the multiplication. So I can do 2 to the 4th by going 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, or I can use my calculator, and I'll get 16 times 5 to the 2nd is 25 times 4 to the 1 is just a 4. And so we need to multiply 16 times 25 times 4, and that's going to give us 1,600. So our final answer is 1,600. Example 2. Notice here we have a lot going on. We've got a subtract and a times and an exponent and a division and another subtract and another exponent. So we're going to have to start on the inside of our grouping symbols. So that's going to be inside here. So that gives me 114 minus, and I need to do the 13 times 8 first. That's 104. All of that is squared. And I've got a division bar, and I can go ahead and do on the bottom. Remember, that division bar tells us to do everything top and bottom and divide last. So that's going to be 27 minus 2. Finishing up the top, 114 minus 104. That's going to be a 10 squared. And my denominator is a 25. So I still have to do my exponent on top now. That's 100 divided by 25. So my final answer is 4. So again, we started on the inside. We did the multiplication first because it comes before subtraction. We get that, we get a 10, then we square, we get 100. Our denominator, we get a 27 by doing 3 to the 3rd. Subtract 2 is 25. 10 squared is 100, divided by 25 is 4. Example 3. We have an addition and we have an exponent. We must do the exponent first. So that's 3 plus 7 times 7, 49. So my final answer there is 52. I add last, exponent before the addition. Number 4, I have parentheses. I do inside the parentheses first. I get a 4. 4 cubed means 4 times 4 times 4. That's going to give me a 64. Number 5. We've got several things here. We've got exponents. we've got a subtract and a divide. All these exponents have to come first. So I'm going to do 9 to the third. That is 729 minus 8 to the second. That's a 64. Divided by 2 to the third. That's an 8. Now this division has to come before the subtraction. So this is 729 minus 64 divided by 8 is 8. So that's going to be 721. 729 minus 8 is 721. Example 6. We've got to multiply, we've got exponents, and we've got to subtract. Exponents come before multiply, subtract comes last. So we have 4 times 6 squared is 36 minus 5 to the third is 125. Now the multiplication, 4 times 36 comes next, 144. The last thing we do is 144 minus 125, and that gives us a final answer of 19. Number 7, we have parentheses, multiplication, exponent, division bar, another exponent, and a subtraction. So parentheses has to come first, and then we'll do everything in there squared, and then the denominator. So this is 114 minus 13 times 8, 104. This looks like a problem we've already had, doesn't it? I think it's exactly the same. But that's okay. It's good practice. All of that is divided by 27 minus 2. Remember, we're going to do the division last. That's like a grouping symbol that says do everything on top, do everything on bottom, divide last. So that gives me a 10 squared over 25. 10 times 10 is 100. Divided by 25. Final answer is 4. Number 8. We have a division, an exponent, and an addition. According to our order, exponents will come first, then division, then addition. So that's going to give us 63 divided by 9, because 3 squared is 9. Add 6. We must divide first. 7 plus 6. 7 plus 6. Our final answer is 13. Number 9, we have parentheses, we have an exponent, we have a divide, and a subtract. So we're going to do parentheses first, then our exponent, then divide, and we're going to subtract last. So that's 21 divided by 7 is 3 squared minus 8. 3 squared is 9. 9 minus 8 is a final answer of 1. Number 10, we're going to calculate the square root of 361. That's a pretty big number, so I'm going to have to use my calculator. So I'm going to press the second key, then I'm going to press the x squared key. These two keys will give you the square root key because it's above x squared. Then I'll press the 361. So second x squared 361, and that comes out to be just 19. That means that if I do 19 squared, or 19 times 19, I will get 361. Again, I'm going to use the calculator here, so I'm going to press second and x squared so that I get access to the square root key, which is above x squared, and then 3.8, second x squared, 3.8, and this time I get a decimal that's 1.949358869, but I notice this says 2 decimal places, so I have to look. That's 1, 2. Since that's a 9, it's going to bump up that 4 to 1.95. 1.95. Now, if we square 1.95 it's not going to be exactly 3.8. And that's because we rounded. In fact, it comes out to 3.8025 because we have a little rounding error, but it is close enough to 2 decimal places. The square root of 215. So second x squared 215, again, 14.66287883. But when I follow the directions to 2 decimal places, it is 14.66. In number 13, we have 3 times the square root of 23. So I'm going to have to do the square root of 23 first, and then I'm going to go ahead and make a note. I'm going to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to go 3 times, now I'm going to do the square root of 23 to several decimal places, maybe 4 or 5, so that I can round it properly to 2. So I've got second x squared 23. So this is going to be times, and I'll put it in parentheses, 4.79583. And this is going to be an estimate. 3 times 4.79583 gives me 14.38749. To 2 decimal places, I've got this 7. It's going to bump that up to 14.39. Now you'll notice here that I use parentheses for multiplication. And remember, there are several ways. If I want to do 3 times 2, the old-fashioned way is 3x2. But because of x in algebra, they've developed other ways. So 3.2 and also 3 parentheses 2. All of these have the same answer, 6. So sometimes you'll see parentheses, sometimes you'll see a dot. Now, because this has a decimal involved, it would be kind of confusing if you use that dot for the multiplication. So think about that as you pick either the X or the dot or the parentheses. I usually default to parentheses because it doesn't, it always means multiply, and it never gets confused with the decimal or the X in algebra. Okay, number 14, 53 minus the square root of 14. Well, the square root is a grouping symbol. So we have to do that first, and I'm paying attention here. So I'll go 3 or 4 places. So I'll go second x squared 14, and that gives me a 3.741, and I'll go ahead and round that to a 7. And 53 minus 3.7417 gives me a 49.2583. The 8 is going to bump the 5 up to 49.26. Example 15. We have grouping symbol. This time, this square root is a grouping symbol. But within the square root, I've got exponents. So I need to do the exponents first because I'm working on the inside. So 2 to the 5th, 2 caret key 5 is 32. And 3 to the 3rd is 27. So it's 32 minus 27. Now do what's inside that. That's going to be the square root of 5. And now, look at these symbols, by the way. These little squiggly equal to's mean approximately equal to. This is exactly the square root of 5, but it's approximately second x squared 5. And let's see, 2.23607. But to 2 decimal places, this 6 is going to bump that 3 up to 2.24. Number 16, same thing here. We've got exponents inside of grouping symbol. We have to do the grouping symbol first. This is going to be some big numbers this time. 196x squared. I'm using the x squared key because look, that's to the second power. So that's 38416 plus 315x squared button, 99225. Now, I've got to add before I take the square root. Okay, if you take the square root first, you're going to miss it. because exponents come before the addition. So 38,416 plus 99,225 gives me the square root of 137,641. So I have to press second and x squared, and then 137,641, and I get that it comes out to exactly 371. 371. Now, number 17 is an application, and it sort of demonstrates to us what a square root is. If you have a square, pretty good square, it's pretty good, and the side of the square is 3 and 3, then the area of that square would be 9, because 3 times 3 is the number of squares you see in here. That's called the area. Okay? Well, if you know the area is 9 squares, then you can say if it's a square, the square root of 9 or 3 is the length of the side. Okay? So what they give us is one that's not a perfect number square. They say that this square has an area of 184.37, so we have to take the square root of 184.37. It's going to be approximate, so we do second x squared 184.37, and we get approximately to 2 decimal places 13.58. It's 13.578, so 13.58. Number 18. The following calculation must be performed to find the stress in pounds per square inch on a plunger. Find the stress to the nearest 1,000 psi. Now you got to be careful here. This says 1,000, not thousandth. So it's like 19,000 or 5,000 or 21,000. So we're not doing thousandths. Thousandths with the THS on the end would be 3 places past the decimal, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So be sure you pay attention to that. It's easy to miss. So I have several operations here in my numerator. I have 3,000, and this means times, okay? Even though it's not written in there, whenever you have a number beside grouping symbols, it's always multiplication. So that means multiplication. And I'm going to have to get an approximation for that square root of 32, so I'm going to go ahead and put the squiggly equal, which is the approximate sign. So I've got 3,000 times, and I'm going to go maybe 3 or 4 decimal places. I'm going to go to the nearest 1,000, so 1 or 2 places is probably enough. But let's go 4. So we're going to go second x squared 32, and I'm going to get a 5.65685 divided by 0.186. So I'm going to do my division last. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply that number times 3,000. And I get 16,970.56. And now I'll go ahead and round it to 3 decimal places. I'm going to divide that number by 0.186. And I get 91,240. Let me write that out. 91,239.58467. Now here's the tricky part. We've got 91,239 to the nearest 1,000. That would be 91,000, because you're going to round, because of that 2, you're just going to round to 91,000. So you have to pay close attention to that, because a lot of times when I do this, sometimes I accidentally read that as thousandths. So be really careful. Number 19. The velocity in feet per second of water discharged from a hose with a nozzle pressure of 59 psi is given by the formula 12.14 times the square root of 59. So we're going to do our square root first. And I'm going to go ahead, and it says to the nearest whole number. So I don't need very many decimal places. So I'll just go maybe 3 decimal places. Second square root of 59. That's 7.681. I'll multiply that by 12.14. And I get that this is approximately 93.24910,938. I can put everything that's behind the decimal, but I don't need all that, do I? Because I only want it to the nearest whole number. So I'm just looking at this 2 here to the nearest whole number. It's 93. 93 feet per second. Number 20. Calculate the height using the following formula. Height in feet is the square root of 5220 divided by 4 plus 1 all squared. So that means I'm going to do all of this in here first, then I'm going to square it. Subtract from that 5220 divided by 4 squared. So the first thing I have to do, and I'm going to put an approximate because it's going to end up probably not a rational. It's going to end up to those irrational like the square root of 2. So inside here, I've got to do 5220 divided by 4. Okay? Then I'm going to add 1, and then I'm going to square it. And then inside here, I can go ahead and do that. I got to do 5220 divided by 4. So 5220 divided by 4 is 1305. Let's see if I can get that in there. 1305. And this is just 1305. So this ends up being 1306 squared minus 1305 squared. So these numbers are going to be pretty big. 1306 squared is, then I got to take the square root. Don't forget, 1705636 minus 1305 squared, 1703025. So I got to subtract those. So 1705, 636 minus 1703025 is the square root of 2611. And the square root of 2611 is approximately 51.09794516. I'm just giving you all the digits in my calculator. I really only need that, look, nearest foot. That means the nearest whole number. So go over here, and it's going to be 51. It's going to be 51 feet. Number 21. The dosage of certain medications are sometimes based on a patient's body surface area. The body surface area in square meters of a patient, 6 feet tall, weighing 171 pounds, is given by this expression. The square root of 171 times 72 divided by 3131. We're going to calculate the BSA for this 171 pound patient. So what we're going to do is we're going to do everything inside first, which is multiplication and division. But remember, the division bar goes last. So that 3131 is going to stay in my denominator here. So I'm going to go ahead and do 171 times 72. That gives me 12,312. Divide that by 3131. And that gives me 3.93229. And look, that's very close to 4. And let's see, but they want it to 2 decimal places, to the nearest hundredth. So I've got to go second x squared 3.93229. And I get that it's approximately 1.9830, but to nearest hundredth, remember, is 2 places, like there are 2 zeros in 100, so it's 1.98. So the BSA is 1.98 square meters. Example 22. Suppose you deposit $4,000 in an investment account that pays 2% annual interest compounded quarterly. Quarterly is 4 times a year. Perform the following calculation to determine the value of the account after 2 years. Well, which would be 1.02 divided by 4 to the 2 times 4. That's where they get the 4,000 times 1.005 to the 8th. This is where the quarterly comes in, here and here, and this is the 2% and this is the 2 years. Don't worry about that right now, just evaluate the formula, but that's why they give you numbers that don't really match, or at least they seem like they don't match in the formula that they give us. This is also going to probably be an approximation, yep, and we're going to go to 2 decimal places. So we're going to go 4,000, and you know what? Let's just enter this in our calculator all at once, because our calculator knows how to do the order of operations. Check this out. If I type in 4,000, parentheses, 1.005, close your parentheses, use your exponent key to the 8th, it will give me 4162.828176. But they want me to round it to the nearest penny, right? 2 decimal places would be tenths, hundredths would be pennies, so 4162.83. We're talking about dollars here, so that's how much money you would have after 2 years if you had invested that money. $4,162.83.